Hi there, thanks again for watching our Galatians Bible study video. It's good to have your company. I hope that you go away and browse and think about these things. I'm sure you'll come up with a lot more than I am able to deliver to you in the few minutes that we are together. We're in Galatians chapter 5. We're still thinking in this section. We're going to get up to verse 12 in this particular recording. And this is the section where he compares circumcision with Christ, or the offence of the cross. Let me read the verses I'm going to deal with this afternoon. Verse 10, I have confidence in you through the Lord that you will be none otherwise minded, but he that troubleth you shall bear his judgment, whoever he be. And I, brethren, if I yet preach circumcision, why do I yet suffer persecution? Then is the offence of the cross ceased. I would they were even cut off which trouble you, for brethren, you have been called unto liberty. I've read into verse 13 unintentionally. That's going into the next section, but it's true, isn't it? We have been called to liberty, and that's what he starts the chapter with. Stand fast therefore in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made us free. Well, he's not saying create the liberty, he's not saying establish the liberty, he's not saying fight for the liberty. He says stand fast in the liberty wherewith Christ has made us free. It's Christ who provides the liberty, whereas they were contesting they need to do certain things and behave in certain ways to be right with God. He says Christ has done it for you. Now, the interesting thing in this section is that Paul says to them in verse 10, I have confidence in you through the Lord. So he's saying, I really am confidence in the Lord that you take no other view, that you won't be otherwise minded. So he said, this is very typical of the way issues in the New Testament are handled, particularly in the book of Hebrews. The kind of thing, it's 6 passages that deal with the possibility of going back. But in all of those passages, you get this emphasis that the writer is persuaded better things of them, that he's convinced if they're genuine, they will go forward with God, with Christ, and they won't go back to the old things of Judaism that were fulfilled in the person of Christ and in the death of Christ. So it's good, isn't it, to see that confidence. I have confidence in you through the Lord that you'll be none otherwise minded. In other words, that you will stick to the truth, that you will take no other view. But he then says at the end of the verse, but he that troubleth you shall bear his judgment, whoever he be. There are times when actually you need to deal very directly and honestly with false teaching. I was just thinking there, just came into my head actually as I was speaking to you just now. Paul says a similar thing when he's talking to Titus in that little epistle, in Titus chapter 1, which I get to now. And he talks about people who are unruly, vain talkers, deceivers. He says, whose mouths must be stopped. And he says, rebuke them sharply. So there are times when direct action has to be taken to uphold the truth. A local church is to be the pillar and the ground of the truth. And the servant deacon, which I believe is a teaching servant, in 1 Timothy chapter 3, he has to be able to defend the faith. He's to uphold the faith. He's to earn to himself a good degree in the faith. There've got to be people who defend the truth and stand for the truth. And Paul was one of them. And the Spirit of God calls us to be like that as well. So Paul says here, the one who's troubling you will bear the penalty, whoever he is. Now he asks a question in verse 11. He says, if I, brethren, yet preach circumcision, why do I yet suffer persecution? So some must have been claiming that Paul was preaching circumcision. And he says, if I do, why am I suffering persecution? Those two things, they don't work together. I'm suffering persecution because I'm preaching that salvation is through the cross and the cross alone. And he talks about if I preach circumcision, then the offence of the cross is ceased. What he means really there is the offence of the cross has been removed. And that takes us to the core of this thing, because the preaching of the cross, as it says in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, is to them that perish foolishness. And so the preaching of the cross is offensive. It's offensive today. Offensive that people would think that a man dying on a cross 2022 years ago, or take 33 years off that, that a man dying on a cross would actually be the means of salvation. And Paul actually uses the word here that we now know as the word for a scandal. The word scandal is something that it's outrageous. It's something that is humiliating. It's something that is shameful. And it comes from the Greek word scandalon, which really was coined and used to describe the preaching of salvation through faith in a crucified Saviour. For crucifixion was a humiliation. And as a Roman citizen, it was not even acceptable for a Roman citizen to be crucified. It was humiliating in the extreme. Paul says, here's the reality. The preaching of the gospel is about the cross. And it is a scandal. It is an offence. He ends the section by saying, I would that they were even cut off, which trouble you. What he's really saying is, they want to cut you off. They want you to be circumcised. He's kind of playing with words here. He says they want you to be circumcised, but I wish they would cut themselves off. Circumcision is a cutting of the flesh. He's saying, I wish they would cut themselves off and stop damaging you and stop hurting you. Now, we're going to go into the next section, not in this recording, but we're going to see again that we have been called to liberty. So stand fast in the liberty wherewith Christ hath made you free. God bless you, and thanks again for your company today.